Good morning. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to try to cover a little bit more. Today we would look at Exodus 23 and 24, but I'm going to try to get through most of chapter 25 as well, and I got started late. But chapter 23, God talks with Moses about the appointed festivals. And the first thing he says is, on the seventh day, 6 days you shall work, and on the seventh day is your Sabbath. So the first festival is our day of worship, a day of relaxation, rejuvenation. It's what we're supposed to do on Sunday for us that way. And then the first festival then is a reminder of the Passover, and that's in the first month of the year. They observe the Passover is one day, and then there is a 7-day festival after that Passover meal that they have, the festival of unleavened bread. And that's talked about in verses like 4 through 8 of chapter 23. And then the next section, starting at verse 9, deals with the festival of first fruits of the harvest. And this goes through verse 14 of how, at the harvest time, they would bring the first gatherings of the harvest as an offering to the Lord. The next one then is it says after that day of the Sabbath, from then you would count off 7 weeks. And so again, you got 7 days in the week, the seventh day is the rest. You go 7 weeks, and then on the 50th day, it says in verse 16, you shall present the offering of the new grain to the Lord. So this festival of the harvest and of the new grain is an ongoing ritual that they do, and it's tells exactly what, like for the grain offering and the first lamb born and different things that way that they would offer to the Lord. And then again, it says when you reap the harvest, leave some on the edges, the corners, don't pick all the grapes, leave some for the alien. And then again, that I am the Lord your God. Starting in verse 23, we go ahead to the 7th month of the year. And again, here we are, this number 7. On the 7th month, on the first day of the 7th month, observe the day with the sounding of trumpets, the trumpet festival. And then on the 10th day of that 7th month is the Day of Atonement. And if you remember back, there were, instructions from God as for the Day of Atonement. And then on the 15th day of the month, we're into verse 33 now, is the festival of booths. So the first month you have the Passover, and then you have the harvest festival, the first fruits, and then the sounding of the trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the festival of booths. A holy day, you shall not work on your occupations, and it's all spelled out in there. And so those are the festivals. Those are the times of the year that the Israelites are to set aside certain times in their lives for God, certain days, and again, very specific instructions from God. In chapter 24, God says, verse 2, command the people of Israel to bring pure oil of beaten olives for a lamp, that the light may be kept burning regularly. And this was to be burned, it says, from evening until morning. And this is, going back to this verse, God saying do this, is one of the reasons that many churches have an eternal candle. And, it's to signify this, the burning of the oil for God, but also the eternal flame is transposed to the New Testament with the blessing of Jesus Christ through this eternal forgiveness of God. So, but we can go back to way back into Leviticus to shortly after God has led the people out of Egypt to find that set up that way, and then again, very specific things to do with many things. You take some, verse 5, take some choice flour of chapter 24. Take some choice flour, make 12 loaves of it with 2/10 of an ephah of grain in each one, of flour. So a very specific size. You bake them and you place them in 2 rows of 6, 12 tribes of Israel. You put some pure on the table of gold with some frankincense in each row, and it's a very specific rituals that the Israelites were to follow and to take to heart, to show their thankfulness and their gratitude to God. And again, it's God continuing to lead and guide. And then getting into starting at verse 10, it says a woman who was an Israelite who had married a foreigner and had a child. Well, this woman's son and a certain Israelite began fighting, and the Israelite woman's son blasphemed God. And God says to Moses to take this blasphemer out of the area, lay their hands on him, and then stone him. I mean, this was, he was blaspheming God, saying there is no God, that God doesn't exist, that, speaking against God. And God said, I won't have that. I mean, this seems very, almost over the top, in so many ways. I mean, if we were to put to death everybody who blasphemed God or used God's name in vain today, there wouldn't be many people left in the world, to be honest with you, if any. But, it's a very, very specific for God. And God is saying, I am holy. Remember that. And I am leading you and guiding you. So the rest of and then it goes into, if a man kills another man, that man should be put to death. If a man kills someone's animal, there's restitution. And here we get in verse 19 and 20 of chapter 24, anyone who maims another shall suffer that same injury. Fracture for a fracture, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, an injury inflicted shall be suffered in return. And, so this is where that eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth comes. But then, then Jesus says later, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, offer your left, and, be merciful, be gracious. So we kind of take that away a little bit, but yet within our judicial system, in most of the world today, we still have that sense of justice. We don't execute so awfully many people anymore, but we imprison them. And there are people that are executed because they have murdered, they have, committed some atrocities. So, some of the laws, many of the laws that we have in our world today, the majority of them, reflect back from what God says, this is how you should treat others. And it's just, think about the 10 Commandments, and if we could follow them, it would be great, but the laws are there. Chapter 25, briefly, the Lord speaks to Moses, and he says that the land should have a Sabbath. 6 days you plant your crops, the 7th year the land rests, and the 8th year then you plant the crop, but then you don't harvest till the 9th year. And in the 6th year, God says, the crop will be plentiful enough for 3 years, so they'll have food for the 7th year and the 8th year until the 9th year's harvest comes in. But every 7 years, the land rests. And as farmers, we know the value of summer following our land, how it rejuvenates itself. We've got so many chemicals and things today that we use that we don't see very much summer follow anymore. But it's letting the land rest and rejuvenate on its own. And then in verse 8 of chapter 25, you shall count off 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7, so 49 years. And then on the 50th year, this kind of goes back to the, to the other festival, you 7 weeks on the 50th day, you did this. So here, on the 50th year was the year of Jubilee, when debts were allowed to be purchased back. If someone had become impoverished and sold themselves into slavery, servitude, they could be set free. If someone had sold their land, they had the option of buying the land back, getting it back into the family. And this is one of the things that Jesus said, I have come to proclaim to you the year of the Jubilee, and so this is something that the Israelites maybe don't observe so much today. I don't know. But it is what God spoke as a law to them. He says, verse 17, I love this. You shall not cheat one another, but you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. You shall not cheat one another. And, you think about how much of that goes on in the world today, and how much problems cheating costs. Cheating on a test to get a good grade, cheating with drug enhancing, or drugs that enhance your abilities. I mean, we're in the Olympics, and you are aware of the scandals of doping and stuff. And you think about cheating in your marriage, cheating on your taxes, cheating. I mean, and then, if you got any conscience at all, you got to feel bad about it. But you shall not cheat one another. And I think that's great. God says in verse 18, you shall observe my statutes and faithfully keep my ordinances. Ordinance, command, laws, this is what God is saying to us to follow that. And so the rest of 25, I'm not going to talk much more about it really, but the rest of chapter 25 describes the Jubilee year and how the Israelites could reclaim their property, reclaim their freedom, and their rights, and to become, again, rather than say a servant or a slave, to be a free man. And there were specifics as to, like, if someone had sold a house, if it was in a walled city or in an open, not walled city, there were differences of things that way, and all of that. So we have rewards for obedience, we have punishment for disobedience, and the year of the Jubilee is a year of, it's like a start over, a mulligan, and if you don't, a mulligan in a golf game or something is, you mess your first shot up, you take a second one with no penalty. And this is the year of Jubilee. It gives the Israelites a start over. God's blessings again today.